Select Board meeting to order for Monday, January 13th, 2025, and note that we will be going into executive session and we will not return before 6 p.m.
Madam Chair, I move that we enter executive session for the following items. Item A, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with all non-union personnel and to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Item B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grade in-aid requirements, the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 22F and G, to review, approve, and or discuss the possible release of executive session meeting minutes dated December 2, 2024, December 16, 2024, December 30, 2024. And item C, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Sections 22F and G, to discuss the possible release of executive session meeting minutes dated June 26, 2023.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Good evening. I'm going to call the Select Board meeting back to order. We were in executive earlier this evening. We took no action on item A. We took action on item B under 1216 and 1230, 2024, and no action on item C. As a reminder, as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. Hearing nobody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For a public comment and announcement.
Good evening. I'm Library Director Ginny Hewitt, and I know the Select Board already knows this, but I wanted to make sure all members of the community are aware that the library is once again open on Mondays. So we had our first day today. Lots of people were in and all excited to have us back to a normal six-day week schedule. And for people who don't know, our hours are Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I had a couple other announcements while I'm here, and one is that through a quirk in our automated system having to do with the pandemic that I won't get into during shutdowns, but anyway, about 1,600 of our patrons, so about 16% of our card holders, received a notice that their cards are expiring at the end of the month. And we didn't have any control over this automated message over the text. So it's normal, your card expires every 3 years. But what the automated notice didn't tell you is you can do this yourself online. And if you just log into clamsnet.org and you log into my account, and if your card is expiring the next 30 days, there's a notice in red. You just click that, you verify your address, your phone number, your email. Some things like that, and then you're all set. So there's no need to come in or call. We're happy to help people if they do come in, but save people a trip if we can. It's, what was I going to say? After this, we'll be going back to randomized, dates, more spread out through the year. So this was kind of a surprise to all the claims libraries that this little hump still existed of so many people having the same expiration date. So anyway, and finally I wanted to give a personal thank you and a public service announcement for the Monomoy Regional High School and School District, because they have opened their track at the high school on Monday and Wednesday nights from 6 to 7:30, so for runners or walkers, and that's where I'm headed now. So it's a great chance for people working during the day to get out and, when the sun sets before 5, but still have some time in the evening to get some exercise.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ginny.
When do we do our thing? Do we do ours before the public or after?
Yeah, we can do ours now. I'm just going to go to. Do you want to? Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to pass along, it's not necessarily about the Select Board, but it's something that affects everybody, and I know people watch the meetings. There has been a real spate of both emails and texts going around that are phishing. They're using Easy Pass, and they're using small amounts of money and invoking you to hit the thing, although you'll notice there are a few more. The one's in Asia, and there's a few more syllables in there than would normally be associated with their URL. But the important thing is don't click on it. Just don't go anywhere with it, because what they're really doing is phishing for your bank account information. And it's going everywhere. Even the kid I'm raising got text, and she doesn't have a license plate.
Thank you, John. Anybody for public comment and announcement?
do my Cape Light Compact public speaking.
Okay, sure. Then you can go, Matt.
Hi, Valerie Bell, the rep for Cape Light Compact. Everybody, just remind everybody that January is when the new rates start. The Cape Light Compact negotiates every 6 months for the electric rates for people who are on Cape Light Compact. So the rate that we were on up through December was 13.098. The new rate from January to July is going to be 12.024. It actually went down this year. Usually winter it goes up because of the cost of gas, but this year it went down. And we beat Eversource by several cents. They're 15.77. So kudos to the Cape Light Compact people for negotiating the good rates. And I talk about getting spammed or scammed. This is also a time when people will be receiving in the mail many solicitations for getting a new electric company. And they'll give you all kinds of promises about how low the rates are going to be, and that buyer beware. Many of these companies will find out what is the going rate like for Cape Light Compact, and they'll undercut it. But if you read the fine print, it's for 1 month. And then they jack it up to like 16 cents a kilowatt hour. So we just caution people, if you get these solicitations and you have any questions at all, please call Cape Light Compact, and they'll be happy to go over it with you and to see if it's legit or not. If you don't know if you're a Cape Light Compact customer, it'll say on your bill. If you still can't find it, again, give them a call, and they will make sure that you are a Cape Light Compact. So we have found many people somehow switched electric companies and didn't even realize they did it, and now they're paying way more than they should for electricity. So keep that in mind. Also, finally, if you are interested in solar panels, heat pumps, that type of thing, there's a lot of programs out there right now. And I know it can be kind of confusing as to which way you should go, what programs should you apply to. Cape Light Compact has recently hired new staff just to walk people through the process. So when you call them, they'll ask you some questions, and they'll say, oh, this grant program is going to be better for you, or this loan program will be better for you, and help you sort of navigate all of that. But there's tons of money out there. There's lots of opportunities to upgrade to more energy efficient and carbon neutral equipment.
Thank you, Val, and that's really important, because I did switch several years ago, and trying to get back to Cape Light Compact was not easy. So, thank you. Okay, anybody, Matt?
Madam Chair, members of the board.
Just say your name for the record.
Oh, sorry, Matt Sutphin.
Thank you.
I am hoping that on your agenda next week will be a full explanation for the public as to how we even have to go discuss a demolition of the church. I know one member of the board didn't sign the P&S because clearly they saw the opportunity for the church to be demolished. Otherwise, I think they would have signed it. The others signed this, what I would call an RPF redo. The voters never expected to have a conversation with you about avoiding the demolition of that church. We voted for it to stand. Nonetheless, Davenport seems to have managed to get a P&S that is inconsistent with the voters' reservation wants, and has gotten enough of it to go and ask for a demolition, to have a demolition considered by the HDHC. So that it got that far, to me, means it wasn't properly shepherded. Something happened between RFP1 and RFP1A redo P&S, where Jamie Vieira feels he can rightly go and proceed with a demolition application. I think you owe it to all of us to be clear on how he got to feel he could rightly go and ask for a demolition. It's the whole problem is being put on the HDHC, and that they don't deserve it. They didn't ask for it. I can't stress enough. Davenport should not be the arbiter of structural integrity of that church, and basically that's what you gave him. So I hope some clarity next week would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for a public comment? Okay. Hearing nobody for more public comment, we'll go to our item presentation, the presentation provided by Karen Shanley for the Finance Director Search Consultant.
So, Madam Chair, as you'll see, joining us remotely on GoToMeeting is Karen Shanley, our Finance Director, Town Accountant, Search Consultant. And as you know, the town has come to agreement with Ms. Shanley. She's assisting HR and administration on, excuse me, advertising and researching, recruiting, and analyzing candidates for the next Finance Director, Town Accountant individual. So with that, Madam Chair, through you, I'd turn it over to Ms. Shanley.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to meet everybody. I just, want to say I appreciate the opportunity to assist the town of Harwich in this very important position search. Would you like a little bit of background, my background?
Yeah, please, that'd be great, thank you.
So I was the HR director in the town of Braintree for 14 years prior to my retirement in November of 2022. And in that capacity, I certainly performed lots of searches for candidates, interviews, recommendations of finalists to the mayor and people involved in the decision-making process. So that's specifically to this engagement. I've also, in the past year and a half, been doing some independent work as an independent investigator for just different types of investigations that really were not, it needed to be outsourced from towns themselves. So that's what I've been doing since my retirement from the town of Braintree. Does anybody have any questions about my background?
I'm going to go to the board members to see if anybody has any particular questions. Does, Pete, I'll start with you.
Less about background, but I'd love to hear you kind of dig in a little bit about your process of what the next few weeks are going to look like.
Okay, I am working with Angelique in terms of the posting and where it will be posted, and then the resumes and applications will come directly to me, and then I'm actually developing questions with the assistance of the acting Finance Director Ed Spellman, and coming up with a list of questions for the qualified candidates who send in applications. And then through that, I will interview people once the posting and applications is closed, and then after interviews, make recommendations to the board for 3 to 5 candidates as finalists.
Would you also, along the lines of questions, work with the board to create questions for our interview?
Absolutely. That was a question that I actually had for you, as to whether you would want assistance with your questions for the finalists.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just exploring what Pete was exploring through you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure which is the cart and which is the horse here, but I would have expected, starting at the beginning, that you'd have a pretty good idea of where it was you were going to advertise for this, because that's been a problem in terms of finding qualified candidates, and I feel like everybody's going to the same well. I was curious. I gathered that you're going to huddle afterwards, but do you have any idea of where that framework is, who it is you're going to be advertising with, and how you're going to be reaching out?
I mean, I think what I would suggest for this particular position is working with the MGFOA, which is Massachusetts Governmental. It's the specific association through Mass Municipal of finance people. So that's one way to reach out. The Mass Municipal Job Board is always a good way to reach out. And I'm not a huge fan of Indeed, because I find that you get so many applications of people who send an application to every single place. So the two through Mass Municipal, I think, would be a good place to start. And I have to say, I have received 4 applications already from candidates that through Angelique, and that's very promising.
Just to follow up, though, because this is a kind of an inbred process in my mind. I mean, what if somebody had municipal bond experience in the private sector or some other things, but they're really an excellent financier? The places you're going, you wouldn't find them.
That is true. I mean, that's a good question. Well, I think that's something I need to huddle with Joe and Ed, and that is true. I know in Braintree just recently hired somebody from the private sector, and I'll also reach out to them as well.
Thank you.
Jeff?
I have nothing. Thank you for joining, and we look forward to working with you.
Michael?
No comments.
And actually, that was going to be my question on terms of any kind of, search advertisement that might be a broader national, again, understanding that it's a difficult market, but just the furthest reach we could get with whatever type of advertising makes sense. Other than that, I don't really have any questions either. And when do you think I guess the only other follow-up to that would be, though, in terms of the questions for the select board to ask, what's the time frame on trying to get those together?
I can do that within the next week, if you would like.
Okay, is that the pleasure of the board to get some questions?
Well, how about, can we come back in perhaps 2 weeks and get a status update and
Sure.
a list of the questions?
Yeah,
Great.
does that work for you? 2 weeks?
That works for me.
Okay. So we'll do that. We'll put that on the agenda for the, what is that, the 27th, I think? So, okay.
27th.
We'll reach out and confirm that with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining tonight.
Okay. Any other questions for me?
I don't have any. I don't think any of the board members do. Joe, do you have any questions?
No, just to say thank you, Karen. Look forward to working with you again.
Looking forward to working with everybody there. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, on to weekly briefing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Phase 3 weekly briefing, as has been mentioned for several weeks now, Robert B. Hour continues to work in the Chestnut Lane area, which remains closed to through traffic. We will be looking for a comprehensive 2-week outlook beyond the 17th to see where they're going next. However, we'll also know more at our monthly construction meeting, which is occurring tomorrow morning. So right now, they remain in the Chestnut Lane area. So again, that is closed to through traffic. And then we will get a better understanding of where they're going to be progressing down along Pleasant Bay Road in that area. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
If it's okay with the board, I'd like to ask that we take one item out of order.
sure, which
I'd
one?
like to bring up Contract A, the contract with Ty and Bond. We have an employee in the room, and I believe that's the only reason he's here tonight. It'd be nice to get him home to his family.
We don't get to go home with ours.
His family called, he'd rather we
Yeah,
delay.
they asked us to put it last under select board report. Come on up.
Thank you.
Checks in the mail, Selectman McCaskill. Thank you very much. I'm here tonight with Eric Ohanian from Titan Bond. I want you to know that after meeting with the administrator this morning and looking at the agenda, he said to have the consultant call in, and Eric says, no, I want to be here. And he lives about an hour away. An hour away.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Great.
I don't know that it would have offered for a mile away, but
Yeah, no. I appreciate the offer. He declined and said he thought it was important for him to
Both
be
could be
here.
the case in the summertime.
I got to work out of our Harwich office. So we have a new office about 4 minutes away, so that was a great opportunity for me.
Great. Good to have you.
So Madam Chair, Eric put together about 8 slides, about 10 minutes, to just give the board a quick briefing on the status of this project. I heard there was some questions about it. It felt like I was here 2 months ago talking about it, went back in the records, and it was actually June. So I think it's kind of overdue for us to be here. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eric, a very capable engineer with Time Bond.
Thank you, Link. So as Link mentioned, I'm Eric Ohanian with Time Bond, project manager. Thank you for having us back to present on the Route 124 Culvert and Fish Passage project. We do have some photos up on the screen. So this is on Route 124 and the Cape Cod Rail Trail looking north. And then there's also a component of the project that includes the outlet control structure at Long Pond. So the culvert goes below both the roadway and the rail trail. It goes through a channelized concrete channel, and then it sources from this outlet control structure at Long Pond. So stepping back a little bit, you can see where Long Pond is in relation to Hinckley's Pond. The channel that we're talking about is in between those two water bodies. This is on Route 124. The project's built a lot of traction with numerous project partners, starting with MVP. They provided grant money several years ago. DCR has been a proponent of the project. We've had numerous meetings with them based on the rail trail component of the project. Cape Cod Conservation District and NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, are also project partners, as well as the town of Harwich, coordinating with DPW primarily, but also with the Department of Natural Resources and the conservation agent. Some of the goals of the project primarily is to improve public safety for vehicles and pedestrians, enhance this very important fish passage for river herring migration, increase community resilience and adapt to the effects of climate change, comply with the Massachusetts river and stream crossing standards, and reduce operation and maintenance burdens, both for the roadway and for the fish passage, because that is a significant maintenance issue right now. So we do have photos, various photos, just showing how the roadway's been maintained. And you can see vaguely in the middle all the different fish. Those are herring that have migrated. That was from this past summer. You can see the concrete channel that's standing at the rail trail looking towards Long Pond. The concrete line channel is about 2.5 feet wide. And then the top photo is looking into Long Pond on a kind of a windy day. So next slide, please. So in June, we completed phase 1, which was funded by MVP. So the town received an $89,000 grant for this work. It included initial site investigation, so site survey, wetland delineation, completing a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis, geotechnical investigations and analysis, reviewing utilities, and then reviewing different design alternatives for the culvert and the channel, and then completing conceptual level design for the culvert replacement, which ultimately was a 9-foot, 6-inch box culvert. So just for clarification, anything larger than a 10-foot span would require Mass DOT involvement as a Chapter 85 review process for a new bridge. By keeping this at 9'6", it does not fall within their purview for Chapter 85 for a bridge. And then there is a rendering on that slide, just kind of showing how schematically things would work. So we do have the roadway shown, and then the green space being maintained in between there and the rail trail. Proposing an informational kiosk at the rail trail itself that could talk about, you know, the benefits of the project, the enhancements that have been made, the importance of the fish passage. Then showing a natural channel between there and Long Pond, and there is a gap right now where there's nothing shown for the transition from Long Pond into this channel. So cue the next slide, phase 2A. Which is underway right now. This is in support of a $246,000 grant that the town received by NRCS and being administered by the Cape Cod Conservation District. This really expands the project to include that outlet control structure from Long Pond, and that includes the channel in between and the culvert. So most recently, this past summer and fall, we've been doing water level and flow monitoring. We'll be expanding the H&H analysis accordingly and looking at different alternatives to improve this structure. Right now, this is a significant maintenance issue, a maintenance item for the Natural Resources Department, where they do have to manually shovel that out. It gets silted in, and it does block fish passage, so fish cannot get through during low flow events when that gets silted in.
Can I ask you one question on that? So what is it currently with the 9'6", what is it currently designed for in terms of, sea level rise? I imagine you're looking at all that to make sure that any kind of, not sea level rise, but flooding, et cetera, and any kind of 100-year storm and that kind of thing where we end up getting inundated. I know you can't overly plan for that because you don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what's the level of planning?
That's a great question. So climate adaptation, there's an RMAT tool that we followed, which includes like inland climate change issues. So that is a consideration that was built into the modeling. I don't know specifically off the top of my head whether it's a 50-year storm or a 100-year storm that the culvert can pass, but it does pass the design standards with freeboard. So currently there is the opening is, I believe, 2'6" with the reinforced concrete pipe that transitions to a stone culvert. So opening that up to a 9'6" span provides much more hydraulic capacity, which has been reviewed in the models. And it also complies with the stream crossing standards.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this grant funds design of the culvert, the channel, and the replacement outlet control structure. Our next milestone will be the 30% design package, but the funding carries us through 60%, 90%, and 100% designs. I'm calling this Phase 2A because fortunately, this covers a lot, but unfortunately, it does not cover everything. So on the next slide, these are the things that are not included in this current grant.
Excuse me, these are things that are excluded by NRCS specifically, that we'll get into. We plan to have MVP fund this, and why we're sitting here asking for this contract and to fund it with Chapter 90 funds is just that the town received a $1.8 million grant from MVP for the Red River Resiliency something Mike Clock project, and I was applying for $200,000. And they only give one grant per community per year. So it was a good thing, bad for this project, good thing that they got funded, and we plan on, we'll get back, and I'm jumping ahead here.
That's great. So we're looking for this to fund environmental permitting, utility coordination, right-of-way review, particularly with the butters right there, knowing that there's private property adjacent to the site. As well as an additional public engagement meeting, in keeping with that informational kiosk at the rail trail, and a geophysical survey, which would be essentially value engineering for the foundation support of the new culvert. As Link mentioned,
These are all things, these are all items, this entire sheet of things that NRCS excludes from funding, that MVP, how should I phrase this, looked like enthusiastically they were going to support. And then that other grant came in and they awarded the higher amount. So rather than wait for another round, which would put this on hold for a year, that's why we're here this evening.
Right.
Thank you.
So I believe the contract that you have in question right now, I guess for processing, the subject contract would be for these services.
Yes.
So upcoming, talking big picture about the project, anticipating 2026, 2027 construction. NRCS and Cape Cod Conservation District have already kind of verbally committed funds towards this project. They have earmarked a significant amount of money that the town can receive. So about $500,000 is earmarked right now for construction administration, and their construction cost estimate is $5.2 million. They're planning to fund 75% of that, and that would leave an obligation of approximately $1.3 million as a town match. But that can be supplied by different ways. That could be provided by MVP or DER or other. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be town funds. They just couldn't be federal funds because it is federal funding providing that 75% base.
Fully anticipating applying to MVP since they've been, the inception of this project, have been a real good partner with us. Again, I was asking for 200, they gave the town 1.8. Well, I'm here.
So but that's a good precursor. So next year, the thought would be to apply for approximately 1.3.
Yes.
To cover the town's match. I do have a summary of the grant funds that the town has received on this project, or at least has earmarked on this, on the next slide. Just starting with the study, that was $89,000 complete last year. Design phase is ongoing. That was $246,000 received by the town. That's ongoing. The permitting and utilities, that's phase 2B. That is currently pending, and the DPW is looking to utilize Mass DOT Chapter 90 funds to cover that. And then earmarked is $525,000 for construction administration and $3.9 million for construction. And that is everything that we have right now in the presentation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'll open up to the board for any questions.
Defer to Pete. I believe Pete had some questions. I'm prepared to make a motion, so I have no questions.
So I think one of the questions we had when this came before us a week or two ago was the impact on Chapter 90. So clearly it's called $200,000 for a round number. You have a little over $3 million in that account, but does it give, no.
That might be a line there, and uncommitted, I think, was in my memo of 1.2 something.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
I don't have my memo in
No,
front
I was
of
in
me.
the wrong line, you're right,
Okay.
1.2. So that leaves you a balance of about $1 million.
Yeah.
How does that impact you?
We-
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. We have been putting every bit of Chapter 90 money, aside from some line painting and some miscellaneous kind of road work, towards installation of drainage systems in conjunction with sewer. Right now, we are fairly caught up. I mean, we got a big phase in front of us, but we've accounted for in that number of 1.2 remaining, accounts for the 1.3 we currently have on the books with Mass DOT for drainage. We haven't gone out and yet gone back to our 5-year road management plan that we've had that has, paving roads, what we're going to do with roads. We've been focused on that. So quite frankly, we get about 700,000 in round numbers from DOT each year, and we typically get about 700,000 in an article from the town each year. So we've been spending 1.4. When we decided to shut the plan down, Selectman Prokowski, about 4 years ago to stop banking our money, our roads are in pretty damn good shape. I'm very proud of the conditions our roads are in. Very proud of the job that Chris Nickerson, our former road manager that retired last year. It's his efforts and your support are why our roads are in good shape. It's consistent funds. So I'm not worried about a lost opportunity cost at $200,000. I was more worried about shelving this project for a year and what happens to our partners if we're not demonstrating we're serious. Are they going to really fork over $5 million to get it done? So that was where my focus was at.
All right, and if I could, Madam Chair, so I think future projection 1.3-ish for the town for this project, potentially from the town. You're going to try for MVP.
Yes, that's my first stop. Since inception, they've been with this for now going on 3 years, I believe. They've been with us and partnered with us. So I think they've indicated verbally they are in support for this, but it's never done until it's done. And it took me completely by surprise that we did not receive that 200 from them funding this portion. I mean, it was good news, bad news situation.
But with that in mind, so if we're not fortunate enough to land the 1.3 from MVP, what other options do we have available?
EDR, DER.
Yeah, DER is an option. It's possible that they could, if you apply, they do have a culvert assistance program. But I've seen other communities apply for that, and DER says, well, no, this is actually a very important fishway, and they make it a priority project. So you could apply for a priority project with DER. And then,
MVP, DER, and NRCS are the only acronyms I know.
I guess you could look into the applicability of MEMA or CZM, but those might be more coastally focused.
And so that first one you mentioned, that's not an option for this $200,000 that we're looking at?
What, MVP?
No, the DE.
I think I think it could be an option, but it's similar to the MVP program. The timing would certainly would delay things, where some of the action items are on critical path.
And they don't retroactively reimburse.
Correct.
Oh, no,
Correct.
not at all. And I'm saying MVP, and I think we have a good shot at it, as long as there's not a competing project that I'm unaware of. I think a high degree of likelihood that we'll get that portion funded. I'd like to, just for a second, say, the beginning of this wasn't my concern for the fish or the environment. It was the condition of the culvert that I had inspected by VHB in, I think, 07, 010, somewhere around there. And they said, well, it's not going to fall down tomorrow, but you better get doing something. So this isn't just a feel-goody, let's do it because the fish need it. We're on borrowed time structurally with this culvert. And it is a major thoroughfare or evacuation route for Brewster, essentially. These are the circumstances. I recommend that we utilize the Chapter 90 money, support this contract, and keep the project moving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Don? Nothing? Jeff?
We all know of your secret love for fish, so you don't have to downplay the fish thing. I'm glad we brought this back, because for me, it was a little fuzzy from back in June, as you put it, and instead of just voting it through last week or the week before, I'm really happy we brought this back. It gives me a lot more clarity. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you've done on this, and the forethought to seek out these grants and save the town of Harwich some significant money. I can remember when $1 million was a lot of money. Now it's just thrown around like it's not a lot anymore, which it kind of isn't. So thank you.
Michael?
Madam Chair, I move that we vote to approve a contract with Ty and Bond, Inc. in the amount of $198,095 for engineering services related to the Herring River Fish Passage at Route 124 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
0. Luck with everything. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Madam
much.
Chair,
Appreciate your
Board.
time.
Thank you, Selectman Castle.
Now we will go on to our consent agenda, so then we can get to our committee presentation.
Madam Chair, under consent, I would just ask that you take the items separately. There is a presentation that's going to occur under item B.
Oh, sorry, right. Okay.
All right.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the minutes for December 30th, I assure you I'm not related to Ann Howell. In number one, and number two, there's a bunch of other references that are hard to even understand what they've associated with, so I'd rather fix them. There's certain times where it just says they.
The full December 30th?
Yeah, it needs to be clarified.
Okay.
Madam Chair, a motion to approve the Select Board meeting minutes from October 30, 2024, as written.
Second.
And then just for discussion, I want to clarify that I should have stuck with my original, and the minutes are fine the way they're written, but I should have stuck with abstain because I'm not in a butter to Austin Road, so just for the record, I should have stuck with my initial in those minutes, but they reflect what I said, so. Don?
And not to that, but just to the general thing. As a matter of fact, it's in the minutes that I'm asking to hold back. And I'm going to keep saying this. To the extent that we do things where we're acting upon information that we receive by email to us directly, whether it's on a Friday or a Monday, and it's a public session, so we have a public discussion, the backup needs to be part of the public. There has to be a packet sitting somewhere with a URL that you can click on to read what that material was, because nobody in the public saw any of the backup to this particular meeting, and I'm just asking again that it gets placed,
Put it on there.
that it gets placed on our
It's not on there.
site. It isn't on there.
Okay. So anyway, motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Madam Chair, through you and members, this evening, we're joined by Mr. Jan Klitsky. Jan, if you would come forward, please. So, Mr. Klitsky had reached out to me several months back with an interest in presenting to you, the board, on behalf of the town, a very generous contribution, and the generosity is absolutely there, but I think that when you hear the motivation and the story behind it, it was very compelling for me. Jan has been a seasonal resident of Harwich for however many years, Jan?
Over 50.
Thank you. So, you know, I know I'm a wash ashore, but he's got more cred in Harwich than I think I certainly do. But with that, Madam Chair, members of the board, he's going to present, and then the request would be if you would accept the gift. Now, the gift that he is mentioning is a financial instrument, where the good news for Jan is it's a 3-page document. The town needs to finalize a 19-page document to make sure those funds transfer over. So we need your vote this evening for the finance team to continue on with that project. With that, Madam Chair, through you to Jan Klitsky.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank Joe and his team, and also the Select Board for your consideration of approval of this. It's a small endowment. It's in the order of $10,000, and the intent is for it to benefit the children and homeless here in town. The motivation behind this is twofold, really. Joe mentioned that I've been myself personally residing in Harwich since 1972, and my late wife, her family goes back to the 19th century, the Clevelands and the Van Burens. So we have a long standing relationship with the town. The more immediate thing for me is that my father died in 1953 in a car accident, so this would be in his living memory. He was a member of the Polish resistance in World War II and received an undergraduate degree from the Underground University of Warsaw, after which he came to the U.S. and became a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, a mathematician and philosopher. He was beloved by his students, and it was not lost on them the irony that in 1953 he died in a car accident in a country road in California after being in the resistance against the Nazis in World War II. So the idea is for the endowment to fund permanently gifts to children and homeless here in Harwich would be in his living memory, and I thank you very much for considering the approval of this small endowment.
Thank you very much for considering Harwich and that donation and amazing history of your dad. I mean, without people like him, where would we be today? So thank you. I'll go to board members if anyone has anything they want to say. Nicole?
All I have is thank you. Thank you very much. This is an amazing gift.
Thank you, sir.
It will go a long way.
As I say, heroes walk among us every day. Just don't know who they are all the time. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Don?
I'll go with what those two said.
Pete?
Again, thank you, appreciate it. Very kind.
Madam
Thank-
Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I move that we accept a gift in the amount of $10,000 from Mr. Jan Kalicki for the programs that benefit children and the homeless in the town of Harwich.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, Jan and I are also working on another part of the project, if you will, a different kind of gift, but not ready to present just yet, but at least wanted you to hear the story and certainly to recognize the generosity. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
It
it.
is an amazing story. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Really appreciate it. Badly needed, too. Okay, so now we can go on to our committee presentations. Wherever you're comfortable, you can podium, sit, whatever you want to do.
Doesn't really matter. I can stand. Again, Valerie Bell, this time with the Harwich Energy and Climate Action Committee. And just my annual, update. We're still a relatively small group, but we are still committed to the charge that we were given with trying to get a good deal for the town energy-wise, but also, looking at decarbonization and climate-related issues. Back in April, we did participate with the Earth Day celebration at 204 Sisson. We had a table there. Several of the town energy committees, us, Eastham and Orleans, last spring, we got together and we sponsored some informational workshops at the different towns. Harwich, ours was May 9th at the Brooks Library and June 22nd at the Community Center. Wasn't too impressed with the attendance, but we were out there with that information. We constantly keep in touch with Cape Light Compact and make sure that we have all the updates on programs and things that are available. In October, Bob Doan from the Pine Oaks group came in and he updated us on the energy efficiency end of the project, which we were very impressed. They were going to make sure they had all the bells and whistles for a modern construction that had an eye towards no carbon usage and heat pumps and all of that. We are still trying to help the town get some electric vehicle charging stations somewhere in town. I guess Joe has the lead on that at this point. There is money out there to do this. The town of Barnstable was able to get like 35 charging stations for almost nothing because they took advantage of the money that's out there. And how did they do that? Well, they did it because they created a position called a sustainability coordinator. Because it's a very complicated world out there. There's a lot of money, but it's coming from all these different places, and you've got to have somebody who is that's their job, to go get this money and to make sure that the town is able to access it. Somebody who has the authority to go out and get the money and make sure the town can access it. So just as an example, town of Barnstable, they're paying this kid about $79,000 a year. He's a full-time employee. He's been working for about 2 years. He has already gotten over $40 million worth of grants for Barnstable. Electric charging vehicles, a microgrid system for the schools, because he was able to dedicate that time and write those grants and go to the meetings and access it. Many of the towns have switched to energy coordinators. They've actually made it a town position. The town of Falmouth has done that. Barnstable. The town of Orleans is in the process of doing it. Cape Light Compact, about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, offered some of the local towns a shared position. Our administration declined to participate. But we can still, look at it. Even if we had a part-time person, even if we didn't have a full-time person, even if it was a part-time person that could just dedicate the time and energy into getting these grants to make sure that we don't miss out on it. The other reason that we think it's important that we keep climate and decarbonization in the forefront is that the state has these lofty goals of net zero by 2050. And it's not an aspiration, it's a law. They passed, it was legislation. And this is coming down the pike. And right now, the state is letting the towns sort of decide how they're going to participate. But I can imagine at some point that the state is going to say, you're mandated to do this, this, and this. And then, you don't get to pick how you do it and when you do it. So what are all these things that we should be doing? The other thing that a lot of the towns are doing is they are creating a town-wide sustainability plan where you could, and that's the committee, that's sort of what we'd like to help with this in the next year, is to solicit maybe some department heads from the town, maybe Dawn, you could participate, where we could sit down and say, what is our plan? I walk Red River Beach every day. That thing is washing away. Do we want to replenish it? Do we want to, what are our plans for moving back from the ocean as sea level continues to rise? What are our plans for, I'm glad we're doing the culvert, that's at least one step to mitigate flooding down there. But there's so many pieces to that, and our last town plan, I think it was 2011 or something like that, and I don't know if there's something in the works now with, climate and sustainability should definitely be a part of that. I'd be happy to attend those meetings, if somebody wants to put my email on the list, but we need to really start looking at it seriously. So we'll continue on. I also hear a lot from citizens of Harwich, and they're very keen to get these types of programs underway and for Harwich. They see other towns doing things, and, doesn't seem like much is getting done in Harwich. Any questions?
Any members of Michael?
I don't. Thank you for your work.
I don't. Thank you very much.
Dawn?
Well, I'm going to give her money's worth for coming in. Yeah, just up front, I'm not interested in litigating whether everything was man-made or nothing was man-made or how many ice ages we have. Reality is we've got rising tides, we've got a bunch of things that we need to deal with, and we're not doing it in a particularly coordinated way. I know we've had this conversation about replacing a boiler both at the 204 and the middle school. I'm not sure if the state isn't slightly disconnected because there's like the grants out there for high-efficiency stuff kind of cap out before you get to that kind of project, and yet they pass a stretch code, and they do all kinds of other things that put the heavier financial burdens are on bigger projects. I get, the problem with you in your committee is you don't have any money and you don't have the ability to spend anything. So basically, you're a bully pulpit to a certain degree. But I urge everybody to pay attention to the practical end of this. The discussion about parking boils down to, can we do that in certain spots without taking away parking from other people to do the charging stations? What kind of charging stations are we going to be doing? I assume, just from what I know, that the Tesla model is really, because it's faster, is probably something that...
Well, level 2 charging station.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be Tesla, but a level 2 charging station.
I get it,
Yeah.
and everybody's starting to sign contracts with each other, so that, but still, what kind of station we at, where we're siting it? I see the state, which is not known for being agile, has turned the park and ride into solar panels, so I'm not even clear about who part of the state government would work with the municipalities to try to advance the goals that they have passed.
Right. Well, there are people out there that, at the state level, like, that are doing this. And that's why it kind of takes a dedicated person to meet with those people and coordinate everything. Now, I'm meeting with Cape Light Compact is coming to our Thursday meeting to update us on our green communities status. And the state is constantly upgrading that program, and so hopefully there's some other perks that we can pull out of that program.
I'm just bringing it up because at the local level, we're not seeing a whole heck of a lot of coordination on the state level. They're putting out mandates for certain things, but they're not really telling you how to follow a road path to get to those things. We even had this discussion about at the affordable housing end of things. They don't qualify either to getting bought down on high efficiency things. And so it can't fall on volunteer committee members, is what I'm saying.
Which is why many towns have chosen to go the sustainability coordinator road, because these are not just, it's not just a citizen volunteering to do this job. These are people that with degrees in energy, and this is their thing. This is
But again,
what they
these
do.
are all
It's a
interrelated. They have increased regulations boiling down to wastewater. And I mean, runoff.
Yeah.
And they're clearly disparate pockets of things that are going on, but there's no real coordination at the state level. It says, if you do this, you can stay involved with this person in this office, and we can work on charging stations, we can work on drainage solutions, hardening the shoreline. I mean, there's a lot going on right now, and it's a lot more than you can possibly
Right.
deal with as an
For people in our
advisory
committee, we're not going to be able to solve that. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it doesn't need to be addressed. And I'm just saying, some towns have found hiring a professional to address these and you make your money back. Whatever you're paying this person, you're going to get back in grants and that type of thing. And that's what most of the towns have found. There's a little groundswell within the town of Harwich that wants this to happen, and so don't be surprised if you hear from other community members about this.
So Barnstable and Falmouth. What other towns?
Barnstable and Falmouth, they hired their own full-time people. I think it's Eastham, Eastham, Orleans is in the process of hiring somebody. But I think Brewster and Eastham are sharing one, through Cape Light Compact. So everybody's sort of doing it slightly differently. I'm not sure a one-day-a-week person is going to be that effective, but who knows? Maybe they can. Another thing is, if you're the scale of your project sometimes helps. You know, like Barnstable, they have big projects, so they qualify for different level of funding that, like they got 35 charging stations. And because they got so many of them, they really didn't have to pay for them. So, I don't know if you guys meet with Barnstable at all, or if you talk to Barnstable, you know,
Yeah, no, we haven't, we
Yeah.
don't meet with them, but I
Yeah.
mean, through the commission, we would get, you know,
Right,
different,
right.
for the county, obviously,
Right,
so.
But there's some, just to end, there's some practical things. I mean, obviously, we use quite a bit of electricity to pump for water towers, and that doesn't necessarily have to come off the grid. Number two, at one point, we had an electric vehicle, but it was leased. Now, we
Right.
don't have an electric vehicle, and yet we're a green community. So this is one of those few times I get to be able to bring something like that up. I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely, as long as you're here and you have a microphone in front of you, I want to make sure that the public knows that this is kind of a daunting task for
It
you.
is, it's a daunting task. We're not giving up, and we'll continue to do research, and when we find things, we will pass them along, and we'll keep you posted.
Thanks.
And Pete, did you have any questions?
Just appreciate your update, appreciate your passion for this, you know, and I often wonder why we have a county government. Seems like a perfect use for somebody in the county government, but who am I to tell
Well, the
them?
county, what they did is they came up with sort of a plan, a big overarching Cape Cod climate plan, which is online, you can look at it. But the implementation of that plan is left to the individual town.
Which I would agree with, however, there should be resources there to help us apply for these grants
Right.
and to go after the monies. It shouldn't be to
In a-
15 communities
Yep.
going after the money.
Yep.
It's that
In a
part-
perfect world, that's
Correct.
how it should be.
So,
But that's not the world we're living in, so.
Well, thank you very
Thanks.
much, Val, for all your time and energy, appreciate it. No pun intended. On to new business.
Madam Chair, members, what you have in front of you under item A is a process. Excuse me, as you may recall, I outlined last week, under fairly new legislation enacted by Governor Healy regarding outdoor space for food and alcohol service, what was amended was zoning law, Chapter 40A, Section 3B. That then impacted upon Chapter 138 licenses, specifically Section 12 licenses restaurants. And as we had an application, a proposed application or a prospective application from an establishment, we were advised that you, the board, have to take one step before that can happen, and that is to establish, the law says, a process by which an application for use of outdoor space for food and alcohol service would be processed. So that's what you have in front of you under item A. The draft there was provided by council. Council has provided this for a number of towns. Ms. Freiner and I tried to Harwichize it, if you will, so that going forward, if anybody, any establishment is looking to rely upon this statute for outdoor food and alcohol service, this is the proposed process. It'll be yours to do with as you see fit. However, as I mentioned, working with council and staff recommends this process.
Great, thank you. Questions from board members on the process? Pete?
no, I think Joe's explanation covered my question.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like a great process. My problem is that in terms of the end users of it, you know, the licensees, it's tucked in here. I hope they don't get the idea that this is unfettered, because it's still inextricably tied to parking, and some of what happened in COVID, which some of the people are looking for, co-opted parking spaces in order to create open spaces, and that's not going to be possible under this, and I hope everybody understands that.
I have nothing.
Michael?
So the only real things are, I know on agendas we can't use acronyms. We're using them all over the place in this. Wouldn't it be cleaner if we didn't use acronyms as a matter of a policy? ABCC, LLA, throughout the document.
Local licensing authority is spelled out.
Yeah, go to 3, or 4, it's not there. ABCC isn't in number 2, ABCC isn't in number 1, and I guess I'm not stuck on that, but I know we can't use it in agendas for a reason. It's going to be a matter of a policy, shouldn't we spell those out?
The only correction I would state is we're not looking for a policy. That has a whole different implication under the law.
Procedure.
Thank you. Process.
Process.
No objection to outlining what they say, but I think, Madam Chair, you were noting under item number 1, where it does not spell out ABCC, but it does spell out LLA. So we could modify that. And if the board's interested, the commentary on parking, what council made us painfully aware of is the local licensing authority, you, the select board, are the only venue that this is heard at. By amending Chapter 48, 3B, the governor essentially streamlined the process. They changed the zoning law and then put it on local licensing authorities. So everything you see here in the process is our current process, with the exception of the restrictions identified under item 2. In the past, we would have relied upon planning board for site plan review, and that's the standard they would have upheld. So the only thing that we can do to account for that consideration on parking is to have a language like that, which was provided by planning, by the planning director. Again, the law requires you to establish a process. Staff is offering you this document. There's never pride of ownership and authorship. Excuse me. However, you do have to have something in place with similar requirements before you can accept any applications.
Thank you, Joe.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
With that said, Joe, I assume that planning, zoning, whomever, would look at the surveyors or the engineers' plans that are presented.
Correct.
Prior to us.
Everything that's required here, we share with staff, so that then when an application comes before you, I, on behalf of staff, can provide all commentary.
Okay.
And you can rely upon that commentary.
Perfect.
The shorthand from council is what they've taken from the Governor's Act, is that you cannot compel the applicant to go anywhere else for any kind of hearing.
Gotcha, okay.
You're it. You're the alpha and the omega.
As long as we can rely on their input. that's
Absolutely, that doesn't
perfect.
change.
Thank you.
And like I said, what you see here, with some minor exceptions, is the process that staff has been using.
It's just now under us.
It has to be, correct.
Don?
Further to
Sorry,
that-
Pete.
No, good.
Were you done?
No, further to that, because Pete's on to something here. The question is, the eternal question, are they talking about the planner opining to us and we make a decision, or are we going to get to see the planner working with the planning board so that they come up with some sort of proposed parking plan? Because these people do that all the time. We're not
So the answer
we're not
is-
experts on that.
The answer is no. If you look at item number 5, where it talks about the local licensing authority will allow public comment and receive input from police, fire, health, planning, zoning, that's not the Board of Health, it's not the Planning Board, and it's not the Zoning Board of Appeals. It is staff related to those. And you cannot hold up an application by sending it to those public bodies for commentary. That's forbidden under 48.3B, and I think the governor, if she were here, perhaps would say along the lines of that was their whole point in enacting this.
Yeah, but that's my question. So you get something just short of, I'm tempted to say DRI, but Michael's going to get mad at me. So development of regional impact, just short of that. And they don't have alcohol. That goes to the planning board, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think
But now all of a sudden the
food or
same,
alcohol goes to you.
but now all of a sudden the same size applicant for parking purposes doesn't go to them and it comes to us, and we've never done this before and we have no idea what we're doing.
We can only take that verbiage of, what is it, 1 spot for every 4 seats? Is that right? I just read that
Correct.
again.
Item number 2 under restrictions, limitations,
Yeah.
and conditions.
I just find it odd because we're getting lathered onto things that we're just amateurs over.
Call Laura Healy.
Yeah, if she's not returning my calls.
Jeff?
I have so much to say about
I'm going to
that.
go to Michael on this.
I'm excited to hear this.
I can see he's excited.
Others are waiting for other topics. Don, I personally think we'd be covered under that, under 5, where it has to go to planning. And just like this last application, there was several comments that were, they can't do it if they can't. So I think it would get kicked somewhere if it was a project that required 10 more parking spots and they didn't have them. I think we would see that in writing. I guess my question on number 5 is, we're not now changing the protocol where we're going to have a public hearing and then we're going to make somebody from police, fire, health, planning, zoning, DPW, and building commissioner to come to said meeting on a Monday
No,
night.
not at all.
It's going to be in writing like we've been doing.
Correct,
it.
exactly.
Thank
Yep.
you.
However, the act does not abridge your ability to say that you'd want to have people present for that purpose.
Okay.
But you couldn't hold off on it.
Thank you. Lastly, on the bottom section, number 6, what is the last word? What does it mean? I can only find a reference to skincare in the dictionary.
And the
Are you talking restrictions, number 6?
Yeah.
Surrounding area, in the surrounding area
Can't
environment.
find that reference in the dictionary, though.
It
Is that a
exists.
word?
It's a word.
Okay, all right,
Came to us from legal. I'm going to use it in Scrabble.
okay. Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application process for outdoor food and alcohol service as presented with minor changes to changing acronyms.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, I'll turn it to you, Joe.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, you should have in your packet a fairly robust document, dare I call it my Swiss Army knife, to try to accomplish several different items at once, not the least of which is first, providing as many fund balance updates and financial reports as possible. And in line with that, then sort of correlated to the upcoming fiscal year 2026 operating budget process. So, Madam Chair, if it's the will of the board, I can read my memo into the record, and then certainly take any questions you have on the memo and any of the reports.
Thank you.
So this memorandum is to the Select Board, jointly provided by me, Joseph Powers, Town Administrator, as well as from Edward Spellman, our Interim Finance Director, Town Accountant. And again, it's fund balances and financial reports, and it's an update on the fiscal year 2026 operating budget. This memorandum provides an explanation of the following attached financial reports, as well as an update on the draft fiscal year 2026 operating budget, as typically presented as Article 4 in the town meeting warrant, as well as Appendix B. And I now read that that should have also said also in the warrant. The memorandum is intended to further support your broad discussion under your agenda item, New Business B, discussion on town operating budget, and discuss a potential joint meeting with the Finance Committee. So attached to this report are the following. First, there are trust fund balances, and there are balances provided herein for stabilization fund, affordable housing trust fund, other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, special purpose stabilization funds, one for affordable housing, one for wastewater, as well as community preservation fund. With some caveats, there are dates, as you can see there. There are some that were as of the end of the calendar year, December 31st, 2024, and the rest were at the end of the last fiscal year. More importantly, I know the folks in finance want me to emphasize that the balances that are presented are unaudited as of yet and may change, and all of this data was as of June 9th, 2025. For special revenue fund balances, you have the revolving funds that are for Golf Pro Shop and Restaurant Lease, Golf Infrastructure Fund, Council on Aging, Cemetery, Community Center, Recreation, Albro House, Wetlands, 204 Sisson Road Municipal Building, Sidewalks, and Tax Title Collection. All of those balances are as of calendar year end, December 31st, 2024. They are also unaudited at present, and they were also produced on January 9th, 2025. But I'll also note that they were put in the same order as they're referenced in our Chapter 8 general bylaw. Additional reports that were provided that are attached is a 6-year history of the Cell Tower Special Revenue Fund, and that is a balance, I believe, as of January 2nd, 2025, and that is a 1-page report. There was a report on golf funds as of January 3rd, 2025, which is a 2-page report. And then there is the automated statement of indebtedness for fiscal year 2024, which is 3 pages. The reference on automated is the form you see there. That is provided by the Commonwealth and has to be filled out by the Finance Department, so that's why it looks like that. And then update on fiscal year 2026 operating budget. The current draft of the town administrator's operating budget, again, is typically presented under Article 4 and outlined in Appendix B of the town meeting warrant, reflects the following currently. Salary and wage expenses, including negotiated step increases, longevity, as well as anticipated retirements. It does not yet include any cost of living increases, AKA raises, and I would just add, not written here, as you know, those are predominantly negotiated between the 8 collective bargaining associations, then you have personnel bylaws, and then you have some that are under contract. The current draft operating budget does reflect increases in operating expenses, but that are separate from any potential enhancement of services. Now, when I say increases in operating expenses, the directive to staff was based on the Select Board message. So folks were asked to maintain programs. If you want to expand, that would be an enhancement of services. So that's where the present budget stands, predominantly for operating departmental budgets and our Appendix B. Additionally, you may be familiar with the document that we used to rely upon through Carol Capola, our finance director at the time, that was referred to as sources and uses. Mr. Spellman has taken that over and continues to update that. So at present, or as of writing of this report, the revenue or sources and expenses or uses analysis is actively being updated and presently accounts for the following. For revenues, we show a fiscal year levy limit of $62,253,276.85 for fiscal year 2026, which would represent a 3.33% increase year over year. Additionally, other revenue, which is typically defined as estimated revenue, which would be local aid, estimated local receipts, and others, we're showing a 2.9% increase year over year. Now, I put a note in there, unrestricted general government aid, just because I like to say the word UGA. UGA is the ugly word that means local aid. So we do not even have a placeholder yet on local aid. I believe I heard correctly that Her Excellency the Governor is doing her State of the State address Thursday evening. So that's typically when we, municipalities through MMA, start to hear what the governor's draft budget is showing. And then, as you know, we go to the MMA conference. We hear updates from administration and finance, who may have updates on House and Senate. But at present, we have no data that's been provided to us on local aid, which is a little bit unusual. However, she may just be embargoing it until her State of the State address this Thursday. That's the general gist of where we are right now in revenue. And again, expense estimates are still in flux while we await draft numbers from various county and state sources, as well as our 2 regional school systems. Otherwise, the draft number for expenses is merely showing what I've said before, meaning right now the departmental operating budgets as put in by staff, again, no salary, no COLA numbers present, and expenses meant to be year over year static, not enhancement of services. I will add that I wanted to just familiarize myself. So when you talk about those expense estimates, and if you remember past versions of the sources and uses, the bottom half of the sources and uses are these other state and county sources. And they represent predominantly semi-fixed and fixed costs year over year. Now, generally speaking, say, and just as spitballing for right now, but say you see a departmental line item of Article 4, which is just for our departments, separate from school and everything else. Say you see a number of, say, $37+ million. The next line you see is debt service. Debt service for next year, just the way that our borrowing falls out, actually decreases. Of course, before we know it increases in fiscal year 27 for two reasons. 26 is a decrease year over year, and 27 will look more like 25 plus an increase. I bring all that up because those semi-fixed and fixed costs are a game changer. We could talk tonight at length about the departmental budgets, but until we know those semi-fixed and fixed costs, which year over year add an additional $10+ million to our budget, we really don't have the full picture yet. So some of those costs would be Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, so our health insurance for both employees and retirees. Now, at present, I'm projecting a 10% increase. I'm trying to be conservative. We would never expect it to exceed that. We certainly wanted to come in lower than that. And traditionally, the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, of which I'm a representative member for the town, as is our HR generalist, we expect to hear that in early February, what their number is, so we'll plug that in. We're then going to be waiting on our OPEB assessment, our county assessments. We have a pretty good idea of our property and casualty, our insurance, if you will, but that is a number that I get at the MMA conference this Saturday morning. We get breakfast, then we get the great news about property and liability insurance. So when we come back from breakfast, huzzah, like hotel food's not bad enough, we'll know what Maya's saying for our property and liability. So a lot of these numbers are going to get filled in within the coming weeks. However, as I close out my memo, I look forward to your discussion this evening. I will be finalizing my draft budget in anticipation of a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and can present the most recent information to you. So I can present to you what I have next Tuesday. My only caveats, my only concerns are, it's going to demonstrate operating budgets that are very low. Thank you, Matt. Departmental budgets, which are low because we're not accounting for salary yet. Expenses are not extraordinary and separate from enhancement of services. So I can roll it out however, whenever you want. I think what's going to be most beneficial for me and Ed, and by extension our teams, are any joint meetings you want to have with the Finance Committee. And got another inquiry in today, the round robin, so to speak, a day that traditionally has been a Saturday where the two entities get together. So I'll close it there, but just by saying last week I got a great question from one of your colleagues, and I did the wink and the nod, but really, you know, for me, we have the required deadlines in the charter. We're not violating any of those. We're ahead of those. Really, for me, is the charter says that I build a budget, and then after I give it to you, it goes right over to FinCom. So there is a way, I think, that you can set up a process, either next week or the week after, where we have this in-depth conversation, and then you get it to Finance Committee, but you reserve your rights to amend. Having said all that, Madam Chair, I can answer, hopefully answer any questions you have, certainly go over some of the balance reports that were there, and anything else you'd like to discuss with regard to the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any particular board member want to start with any questions? Or do you want me to just go down the line? Don?
Actually, I want to thank Joe first. For those people who aren't reading the 132 pages along with us, I want to give the highlights for a couple of questions I've had for like 6 to 8 months. First of all, for us, we have been, we are, and we continue to accrue money from the cell tower lease into a fund, and we can disperse all of it or some of it, but it is building up year to year. It is not going to free cash as we were originally told. So that's good news. Secondly, it's also good news to get past the argument about what basis we're charging for golf memberships, because the reality is, if you look at this here, there's two, so the public can focus in on this, there's two uses for that. one of them is for non-borrowed infrastructure improvements, and one of them is to carry debt load incrementally through the years from those memberships so that we don't wind up having to borrow that. So both of those things are good news because they're sitting there, that's real money, and we're continuing to recruit, and we can put it where we need to put it. So again, I appreciate this because this is what I've been looking for, exactly what I've been looking for.
Thank you, and I'll pass it along to staff as well. Thank you.
Pete?
I think on the conversation of presenting a draft budget to us, I suppose, to your point, Joe, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to give us something next week when it's going to be really an unfinished product that
Right.
will only lead to confusion. So I think I'd rather wait, a few weeks till you have some more solid information in front of you, with the understanding that I'd still like it prior to the outlined deadline.
Sure.
And again, in a draft form so that we can, have some conversations as a group
Sure.
and, just help all of us have a general understanding of what it looks like and then timeframes to come back with any type of questions or adjustments. So that's kind of where I stand on that. Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, if I could, through you
Yeah.
back to the member, thank you, because normal process would be, so next week we have our monthly department head meeting. This week, I'm going through the line items of the expense lines, because the salary is what it is. So now I'm just going through, and I'm doing what I used to do as a town meeting member and a representative of town meeting town, and what town meetings do. Meeting voters do, you go into the Appendix B and you go down the right-hand column and look at the percentages. So anything that's in excess of 2.5%, or the levy limit, roughly, the 2.5, Prop 2.5 itself, generally speaking, raises the question of, okay, why is that there? Now, there aren't a lot of them. There are 15 departments that, out of, say, I believe 55 or so, that have increases that are above the norm of 2.5%. Now, one of them relates to a public body that is looking at a thousands% increase if we increase the reserve fund transfer dollar amount. And so that skews it right there, but not that there's casting any aspersions on it, but when you see that, that draws the eye to it. So I'm going to spend this week validating, are we sure this is maintaining programs going forward? And then next week at the department head meeting, I'm going to talk to the whole group about where we're at and what we see, but also talk about some of those enhancement of services. There aren't a lot, but those will impact upon the operating budgets. So being able to do that in our regular course of events as we get more data will be very helpful. And to your point, I think the charter requirement was something along the lines of, say, the second or third Tuesday in February. It's going to be a Monday, and it can be the 27th of this month, or I think it's the 3rd if I'm doing the calendar right in February. And so you all will have that, and we can start having really substantive discussions on that. And then last but not least, all of that is operating budget. None of that gets to anticipated articles outside of capital that may require funding. Sure. That's something completely separate.
Yep.
But we have a sense of the articles right now as well.
Okay.
But thank you.
Good.
Good. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, before I forget it, it was in part of our budget message, but I just want to point it out. We've tied, for the most part, enhancement of services to being able to offset.
Correct.
So it's not like we're going to be asking for new stuff, but if somebody's going to come forward, we need to be able to identify, all right, where are we going to grab this from the existing budget?
Madam Chair, if I could, through you to the member, thank you for that, because the assignment was, remember, if you're going for enhancement of services, you're going to need to find the offset. So that is the next evaluation and analysis. Thank you.
Jeff?
I'll punt to Michael if I could.
I'm going to punt right back. I have nothing to add.
Somebody kick it.
I just say I agree with Pete. I think having, waiting a few weeks and having something concrete in front of us makes a lot more sense. But this is very helpful to be able to digest all this now.
I'll agree with that. And do we have a free cash? Do we know when that's going to land?
We were told this month. It really could come down any day. I will tell you that I would expect it to be before the whole municipal and state government descends on the seaport, which is late next week, because DLS promised us that they were working on everybody's tax rate setting and all that. That's why we yielded. So we should have that this month. So what usually happens is the notice actually goes to the finance director, the treasurer, the town administrator, and the chair of the board. So as soon as we get that, we'll just redistribute it to everybody.
But it was our request for certification, so I can guarantee you it's not going to be more than what we asked for.
Which was like, what was it, 5.6?
5 point something, yeah.
5.6, I think it was.
It was vague on that.
That's all for me.
Anything else?
No, that's all for me. Thank
I
you.
don't have any follow-up either, so thank you very much for putting all this information together, and I agree. I mean, obviously, it's a more substantial conversation when we have more rock-solid information.
Madam Chair, if I could just close then. Certainly a note of gratitude to Ed. You know, you've seen some of my super friends from other towns that we've worked well together, and Ed and I speak a language. However, the team, and most notably Megan Green, Megan Eldridge, Natasha Lyon, Danielle Freiner, have been doing great work on all of this. And if there was one among them, I think we'd all agree, Megan Green has done a phenomenal job in the absence of a finance director, and in the absence of a colleague who is raising a beautiful child that we saw. So there have been impacts with parental leave and all that, but Megan Green continues to get it done. So a great word of thanks to her as well.
No,
Thank you.
kudos to Megan, yep.
Madam,
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, before we move on, Joe alluded to the Saturday meeting.
Oh, yeah, actually, I had that on my list, too. I literally just wrote that down earlier tonight about
Yes, so-
what date we were going
Right,
to
so if we can try to get
finalize.
2 or 3, if we can try to get 2 or 3 options to
Yeah.
us so that we can try to plan
We
ahead.
need to do that, yeah. So I agree, we need to do that in the next week or two, so,
Set the date.
yeah.
And before we get to that, Dick, make my pitch that the whole point of that is for people to make pitches to us if they have anything they want to say, so it's kind of like too late if we do it in mid-March or early March. It's got to be earlier than that.
February.
Look, that's what I'm trying to say, is that if this really is an appeals possibility for department heads, it's too late if it gets beyond that.
Yeah, so I think we should get some dates out, maybe this week, Joe, not to get off track, but that we get on that, because it's already mid-January.
If I may request to take something out of line, or out
Out of
order
line.
here. Out of line.
You're out of line.
I'm
We
out of
often
line.
do that.
But I don't know who we have online here, but the D, E, and F probably could go quickly, and then we can dive into the traffic study.
Yeah, I agree.
Take those 3 off. Thank you, Mr. Piekarski. I will move that we approve a 2025 annual Class 2 used auto dealer license renewal for Good Sons Motor Cars, 210 Queen Anne Road.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
I move that we approve a 2025 annual Class 4 auto repair license renewal for VTech Auto Center LLC, DBA VTech Auto Center, 805 Route 28.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve a temporary closure for Ember Pizza, Inc., 600 Route 28, closing January 9, 2025 through January 30, 2025.
So my only question there is January 9th and it's January 13th. So,
I'd be willing to second it, but can I make a comment? Because you're onto something there. In the future, I'm not going to hold this person up because we haven't said this before, but you can't ask us for permission to close when you've already closed. So this would be the last time I will ever vote on one unless there's extraordinary circumstances, because the process is to get permission to close. But clearly, that's happened 4 days ago.
I do know that they were advised by our wonderful licensing.
If I may,
Yeah.
they were advised, several were, they complied.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. Say
And
that-
that's
say
not
that
about
again,
this.
I'm sorry.
Well, licensees are always advised that if you're going to be shutting down for any purpose, the regulations are very clear. You must first seek approval from the local licensing authority.
Right,
So this establishment, although late, did comply.
understood.
There may be others that haven't.
Do you know when it, yeah, Thank you for that, too.
Yep.
Do we know when this came in?
I believe it came in early last week, and so that's, the soonest that staff could put it on was tonight.
So we have a motion and a second.
And to be fair, I actually heard from people that by the time the application came in, they were already locked. So you wouldn't know that, but that's what,
Correct, I wouldn't, thank you.
but again, I'd be willing to do this, but everybody's got to understand this is permission to do, not blessing that you have done.
Right, I would argue the regulations are very clear. Madam Chair, if I could, I apologize. Was there a motion and a second?
There was a motion.
Yeah, I second it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you for bringing that up, Madam Chair. The question I have is, they were closed before the 9th. I believe the letter came in on the 9th, because doing my due diligence, I believe the date on the letter was the 9th, and it was closed before the 9th. Normally, we're also presented with why they're closing. So I believe there is a rule on, and there's normally a reason given why they're closing. I don't have, where is that?
Minor repairs, deep cleaning, and seasonal maintenance. It's in our pack.
Okay. And, you know, this is part of our policy for a reason, and the fact that this came in late and others, I'm with Don, I'm not voting for them. They have plenty of time to determine that.
I'll vote for this, but nothing in the future, but so we're almost in the same spot.
So if I can run with that, so along Michael's point and Don's earlier comment, what is our recourse? Clearly, the establishment is closed. And forget this particular one, as you alluded to, and I think rightfully so, we have others that don't even submit a letter. What is our recourse?
One could argue, as your past hearing officer, I'm not arguing. One could argue that it could be construed as a violation of their liquor license based on the regulations.
All right. So I think it's something we want to explore, especially, you know, I agree with submitting it in less than appropriate time frame, but for those that aren't submitting them at all, I think it's something we need to, you know, be ready to act upon.
And actually, the injury that we can cause somebody is really minuscule now, because since you last served in the early 2000s, the seasonal licenses go much longer than they used to. And there's actually an embargo past a certain point on issuing licenses for year-round places. So you're taking up somebody else's possibility, somebody like Milano's, or just to name somebody, who might be sitting there saying, geez, I wish I could have an annual license. We went through this in the early 2000s. I mean, if people keep coming in routinely and closing for 3 months, they might as well get a seasonal license because they can open up again in April.
May I, Madam Chair? Sure. Joe, no need to be sorry. Would it be a difficult task to send just a friendly letter to our partners, just so everybody understands where we're at and what we're doing, and giving them notice that this is the procedure that must be followed?
Certainly, no, it would not be a difficult task. It is certainly something that can be done. And further, when we have our annual and seasonal license meetings, I will emphasize again, this discussion tonight is going to be a great signal post, if I could say it that way, for anyone that has a Section 12, to hear the local licensing authority talking about the importance of this in your regulations. So that'd be very simple to do.
Well, I'm asking if that would be something the board would support.
I mean, I think this discussion alone shows that we would support it, so
And
I think that.
What I heard, I know there's still a motion and a pending vote, but what
Yeah.
I heard is, I'll work with staff and I'll create a letter that I'll send out on behalf of the local licensing authority, if that works. You do want to have some separation, because remember, you are the adjudicatory authority as well.
Easy for you to say.
Sure. I can, adjudicatory. I'll say it more right as I say it more.
Right, or
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just had an epiphany, and I'm sorry for it, but what are they actually asking for?
Under this agenda item? They're advising the town that they're looking to be closed
For how long?
for a 3-week period, I believe.
Yeah,
Right?
it's till the 30th.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's what
that's
they've
what the
applied
request
for.
is.
Right.
So
So
whatever vote we take
if it
has to
may,
be
yep.
limited to that time period.
That was the motion.
That was the motion, yeah.
Madam Chair, just to add it into your record, the manager of record is writing to inform the Select Board it is the intention of Ember Pizza to close from January 9, 2025 to January 30, 2025 for minor repairs, deep cleaning, and seasonal maintenance.
That's an oddly narrow request.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Opposed.
No,
Sorry,
I'm
sorry,
opposed.
you're
He's opposed.
Michael's
Opposed.
opposed. Oh, you're opposed.
So it's 3-2.
Apologies, so 3-2. That's it. On to the discussion on the traffic study.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, joining us remotely are Steve and Matt from VHB. I'm saying that purposely because I'm going to rely upon Steve Rhodes to help me in the introduction, simply because I don't want to butcher Matt's name. And Matt's going to be doing the bulk of the presenting, I believe. However, as you know, Steve and I met several months ago. VHB is our engineering consultant on many matters to do with traffic and roads. However, specifically, we engaged them to do a North Harwich traffic study, which is evidenced here physically, a 60-plus page report, which was fantastic, and 10 times that in appendices, which, as I said to Matt and Steve earlier today, is going to be a boon for all of us on staff that work on these matters. So this is great information to have, but they're going to tell us what it means. And then, Madam Chair, members of the board, remember that they're also under engagement to do a Harwich Port traffic study, which they'll talk about the timeline of that at the end of their presentation. And again, as we're talking about North Harwich, we know that there are several different projects that are contemplated and being proposed, and what that's going to do to future traffic. Similarly, when we talk about Harwich Port and the traffic and the safety and all that, we're going to rely upon their data for that as well, to have really informed discussions. And then last but not least, I would just offer that, not just because of the heft and the depth of what they've covered, this will not be our last discussion on these topics for sure. But with that, Steve, if you could help me introduce Matt, and then they're also going to talk about key takeaways and some other things that you all can talk about at future meetings. So with that, Madam Chair, through you to VHB.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So yeah, I'm Steve Rhodes. I've been in front of you before. I'm a project manager at VHB. My expertise is in transportation, but not in traffic studies. And so that is where we brought Matt in. And Matt is a senior project engineer. And at that point, I will just turn it over to him to run through our presentation.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hello, members of the board. Nice to meet you tonight. As Steve and Joe said, my name is Matt Duranlo. I'm a senior project engineer here at VHB, and I'm going to talk about the North Harwich traffic study. I have a couple of slides I'd like to go through, but I think I might need permission to share my screen, it's looking like.
Matt's working on it for you.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
No problem. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, so again, I'm Matt Duranlo with VHB, and I'm going to talk about the North Harwich traffic study. So I know members of the board, they received the traffic study late last week, and as Joe said, there's a lot of data in it, and I don't expect everyone to have gone through the report in full detail already, but I just want to highlight on a couple of the takeaways today and a couple of the highlights. And as Joe said, we can talk about this more in detail once everyone has a chance to digest it more thoroughly. But just want to start off with the scope of the study, what VHB was tasked to do looking at this North Harwich traffic study. So starting off, we did a review of existing conditions. We looked at the existing inventory, the existing roadway configuration, traffic control, pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. Then we did a look at the existing traffic volumes. We collected traffic counts in October of 2024, so a little after peak season, but we adjusted those up to peak season looking at historical data. And so we have a peak season and an average season condition for all of our operations and vehicle networks. And then, as I just mentioned, we also looked at traffic operations for existing conditions. So that's looking at delay, queues, level of service. We also took a look at, we did a safety review. We looked through MassDOT data to look at safety trends and safety patterns in the study area. Then we also did a review of future development, which I'll touch upon a little bit more in detail in a minute. And from that, we then developed future conditions, volumes, and operations, which we were able to compare against the existing conditions, volumes, and operations. And from there, our final scope item was to identify trouble spots, potential trouble spots based on volumes, operations, safety, that we were flagging for the town in case they want to look more in detail in the future. So just to orient everyone, as Joe mentioned, this is focused, called the North Harwich Traffic Study, but we also included some areas in Harwich Center and in Pleasant Lake. So we looked at 15 intersections shown on this map, primarily focused on the Depot Street corridor, on the Main Street corridor, Great Western Road, Queen Anne Road, and Pleasant Lake Ave, or Route 124. So these 15 intersections were the focus of our study. Also on the map, you can see 14 of them are unsignalized, and then just Queen Anne Road at Pleasant Lake Ave is signalized, sorry. First thing I want to talk about a little bit more in detail is our safety review. So what we did is we took a look at the MassDOT crash data available from MassDOT. So that includes all of vehicular crashes that occurred over the last 5-year span. That includes the number of crashes, the type of crashes, when they occurred, what the road conditions were, a lot of good data. And then we also looked at the existing volumes to calculate crash rates. And so the crash rates, that is a rate that corresponds to the total number of crashes per million entering vehicles. So getting a little technical, but basically what we use this is we compare it against the MassDOT average crash rate for MassDOT District 5, which is most of southeastern Mass and the Cape. And so as you can see on this map, 6 of the 15 study area intersections are above the MassDOT district crash rate. For unsignalized intersections, that's 0.57. So what that indicates is those are intersections that have a higher than average number of crash rates. And so that could indicate that there are existing safety deficiencies, potentially could be like sight distance issues or vehicles not stopping, or queuing could cause rear end crashes, items like that. One intersection I want to highlight, Depot Street at Old Chatham Road, is the highest crash rate in the study area at 1.25, which is over double the average crash rate. And we know that there is at least one fatal crash that occurred there back in 2018. So the next thing I want to highlight from the study is we looked at planned and proposed development projects. We know there's a couple planned things going on in the area, so we wanted to understand from those projects what their impacts would be on the roadway network. So we took a look at future projects and what vehicle trips would be added, and from there we identified a couple projects. We identified Pine Oaks Village Home Phase 4, which we know has been before this board already. We looked at their traffic study, the amount of trips that they're expected to be generated, added that to our roadway network. Just want to iterate here that we are not tasked with peer reviewing their full study, so we did look at it, looked at their trip generation, make sure it generally looked okay, but we didn't do like a full, thorough, in-depth peer review of their study, as we're focused more on a more holistic review of all of the North Harwich traffic conditions. A couple other sites that we included, 456 Queen Anne Road. We know that a request for proposal was awarded last year. No traffic study has been done yet, so we estimated trips using standard traffic engineering procedures from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, added those trips to the network. Then we also added some trips from a subdivision on Headwaters Drive that was approved back in 2016, and we also looked at known projects in abutting towns. So from all those, we added those trips onto the existing conditions. We also added a default growth rate following standard traffic engineering procedures to get our future conditions. The next thing I'm going to highlight, one of the last big things I'm going to highlight, like I said, we did intersection capacity analyses. So this slide and the next couple slides, these are summarizing, this is the weekday morning peak hour operations for the peak season. So for intersection operations, this is showing the level of service. Level of service, it's like an A through F grade, kind of like you're back in grade school, where intersections that have an A or a B generally have the best operations, minimal delays, minimal queuing, and then going down E and F generally are intersections that operate at the poorest level of operations, longer delays, longer queues, and whatnot. So on this graphic here, For each intersection on the left, it's showing the existing 2024 level of service, and on the right, it's showing the future 2031. We projected 7 years into the future level of service. So as you can see, most of the intersections generally have similar grades from the existing to future, but there are a couple that do degrade. Main Street at Queen Anne Road is one that goes from a B to a C in the weekday morning peak hour. Main at Depot as well, C to D. And then also, as you can see pretty clearly, there's a fair amount of intersections that already operate at a poor level of service, especially up on Pleasant Lake Ave at Route 6, Pleasant Lake at Queen Anne Road, down in Harwich Center. And then, like I said, this is the weekday morning. The next slide here is showing the weekday evening, which is similar results. One thing to note is Main Street at Depot Street it's a D under existing conditions, and it's expected to drop to an F under future conditions. And as noted, that's mostly due to the increase in additional volume added to the roadway network. And then we also looked at Saturday midday, which is generally the same trends, but operations are slightly better generally than on weekday morning and weekday evening. So there's a lot of data in here, and I know you guys haven't really dug into this report yet, but just a couple of key takeaways I want to highlight. Safety, as I talked about, 6 of the 15 intersections have crash rates above the MassDOT district average, with the highest crash rate at Depot Street at Old Chatham Road. We identified potential next steps could be to conduct safety assessments at these locations, looking at crash trends and patterns, and from there evaluate potential targeted improvements to improve safety, which could include things such as improving sight distance, improving signage and striping, or even changing the roadway intersection control. Traffic operations, similarly, 7 of the 15 intersections operated at LOSF under the future. As noted, 6 of those 7 already operated at LOSF under existing. Main Street at Depot Street is the only future intersection to be at LOSF that's not currently there. And potential next steps could be to conduct an implementation plan, which would evaluate and assess possible improvements at each location, similar to the safety one, kind of looking more in depth at specific locations and trying to target specific improvements that could improve operations. And the last takeaway I just wanted to highlight is we looked at multimodal accommodations. And I know the 2 rail trails go through here, but beyond that, there's pretty limited bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. There's really only sidewalks in the Harwich Center area, and then on a short stretch of Depot Street. But beyond that, there's pretty limited pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, especially connecting to the rail trails. So that could be another potential next step, is to evaluate future sidewalk and bicycle accommodation improvements. So that's all I have from this. I'll stop sharing my screen right now. I know, as Joe said, you guys haven't had a chance to get into this super in depth yet, but I'm here to take questions. And then also the Harwich Port study, we're also working on that, and we're expecting to have that study done in the next couple of weeks. And at that time, I can come back and talk about that one. But we'll do one at a time as to not overwhelm with traffic data.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. It's a comprehensive report. And hold on, Joe? Yeah?
Madam Chair, just before you open up to the board, Matt's going to share the slide deck later this week.
Okay.
So we'll give that to the board, and we'll add that to your correspondence for next week.
Great.
People will have access to that as well.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, and thank you, Matt.
I'll go
Thank
to
you.
board members. Anybody in particular want to start the conversation?
The slide deck that you just mentioned, you mean this whole presentation?
So this we already have. It's the 9 slides that Matt just went over.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when can we get that via email so that we're not going to a packet to look at it?
That should have been shared with you on Friday when I got it. I thought it went out to the board.
I think it was split, though, because...
That was for the packet. We have a separate for the board. We'll get that to you as well.
Okay. And then
Both places.
that should be put on...
Both
Put it-
places. Both places, please, so that we're not getting something the public doesn't see.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, so if I could, you have, you'll get 2 files. You'll get the traffic study, and you'll get the appendix, both of which are in your packet. So I will get that to the board immediately. And then when the slide deck comes,
That's what I'm talking about.
the slide deck will go to the board, and the slide deck will go to the correspondence, so that everyone has it available next week.
Can we also add it to the website under Pine Oaks for link?
Certainly. Yeah, we can add all of that if you'd like.
And then thank you. you mentioned that you looked at, speaking of Pine Oaks 4, you looked at their traffic study and plugged in their data. What other means of data did you use besides just their traffic study, if any?
So we took a look. The Institute of Transportation Engineers is kind of like the mecca of what traffic engineers use to look at trip generation. So we kind of looked at that ourselves, VHB, using our own resources for the proposed development and see if it roughly aligns with what their traffic study proposes. And we did that, and it showed that our calculations internally roughly aligned. So we ended up using their published calculations to be consistent with what they have. But we did do our own internal check using the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation data.
Thank you. You also mentioned peer review, and this was not a peer review. What's involved in a peer review? Obviously, direction from the town, but what else?
So a peer review usually kind of goes through like another consultant's traffic study, item by item, and it'll kind of go through like the whole report, more than just the trip generation. It'll kind of review like the existing conditions, the crash data, the operations, and kind of basically acts as a QC, checking, doing their own calculations, seeing if they verify with what the report says. And usually the peer consultant will like issue a memorandum highlighting what their findings are and if there are any discrepancies and what like potential questions they have for the primary consultant that did the initial traffic study.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for now. Thank you.
Jeff?
I just have a quick question. Thank you both for doing all the work and being here tonight. For my own clarity, the potential infrastructure improvement consideration, section number 5. In your work, if I'm not mistaken, it includes all future projects for North Harwich. Is that correct? Not just Pine Oaks Village?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. Our future conditions include all of those developments that I highlighted, and they're listed in the report in detail.
Yep, and I see that, and I just wanted to make sure, and I wanted the public to make sure that they understood that as well. You know, for me, what it comes down to is looking at an awful lot of money. I mean, it costs $5 million to create a fish tunnel, and now, what is this going to cost the town? You know, if we're looking at signals, roundabouts, potential land taking, street widening, sidewalks, there's a lot of future infrastructure improvement considerations that need to be looked at. And then I guess my last question is, now that we have this, what do we do with this? Does this go to the state as supplemental information that we provide them? I just want to know what the end game for this, what the board feels the end game for this traffic study. Where is it going to land?
So, I'm sorry.
I'm done. I just like an answer to that.
Well, I'm going to answer
From you,
that.
Julie.
Yeah,
I want-
I'm going to bring it right up there myself. I think ultimately we also heard, and I had jotted down the other things Matt just said, which was, you know, after digesting this better, because it's a ton of info, I focused on the report, I focused on then future, like you just summarized. And I just heard also looking at, you know, implementation plans and multimodal accommodations. So there's a lot in here to figure out where are the real touch points. I think we're all learning that there's more than we probably all imagined. Even the fatalities at, you know, Old Chatham and Factory Road and that area. So I think that we have to dive into all this stuff and then go to the next section of where we go from here and how the impacts are, not just related to Pine Oaks 4 and all the other projects, but the overall cost. But Joe?
And to add, Madam Chair, I'll be meeting with Public Works, Public Safety, Community Development. We're going to talk about this at the staff level, just so that everyone's aware of it generally. We're going to do the same thing when it comes to the Harwich Board traffic study, because I want to make sure that our team, and these are the folks that are more likely going to dive into more of this data to be aware of it, so that as you have conversations and as the community has conversations, because I've heard you say that the Harwich Port conversation is going to be a community forum at some point. And so this gets shared with staff, dissected by staff, and we have it at staff levels. We can also share it with relevant committees, if need be and want be. Going forward, I would imagine that the town will be relying upon this greatly for any projects that are referenced in Chapter 3, or Section 3, excuse me, that the town's going to make everyone aware of. We commissioned this study for a reason. It's telling us the state of our community presently and how our community is going to change over the coming years based on projects and other things. So staff's going to continue dissecting, analyzing, and referring back on an ongoing basis. So then as you continue the conversation at the board level, we should be better informed to help you folks make better decisions, better informed decisions, excuse me.
Thank you, Joe. Don?
This is one instance where I'm surprised that Michael didn't pick up on this, because it's worse. It's not as rosy as this looks. I've been driving on some of these roads for 35 years, especially Queen Anne Road. First of all, it is not uniformly 30 miles an hour. It depends on which stretch you're talking about. The stretch between the roundabout and Pleasant Lake Avenue has 3 different speed limits: 40, 35, and 30. The stretch after that has 2 different speed limits. When you go past the bike trail, it's 30, but it's 40 after that. And I'll tell you right now, coming up Pleasant Lake Avenue, it's not 30 miles an hour. The posted, we're not really good at putting posted signs up for these things, and I can assure you that most of the people that have been following me are not only frustrated, but I felt like they were going to meet me in the back seat over the last 2 years, because they are whipping down all of those roads far in excess of 30. I don't know what the heck you were measuring, but anybody on this board who's been on either of those sections of roads know that this isn't even close to being true. It's not 30, and they're not doing 35. If they're doing 35, it's literally some little old lady going to church, because there is nobody that I know that's doing 35 on Queen Anne Road. So that's my piece. I really...
Can you say you're speeding?
No, actually, I'm doing my driver's ed thing, and I'm watching them off in the distance and saying, how many feet per second would they be that far away from me and then get right up behind me? And I calculate that some of them are doing 50 to 55 miles an hour. Many of them are doing 40 to 45 in the 30-mile-an-hour zone. So this is not true. I mean, I get that there's posted signs, but I really had an epiphany when I had to rent a car about 6 months ago, and it started throwing into the windshield what the GPS speed limits were, because they are much lower than what people are doing. And I kept getting yellow when I was driving and trying to do 30, and I'm doing apparently 32, 33 miles an hour, but nobody's doing that behind me. I mean, I'm just calling out the emperor having no clothes here. That part of the report, I just disregard. It's not true.
Well, first of all, I was pretty certain that between 124 and the roundabout was 55 miles an hour. That's just
You're the one car in the study they got.
just an observation.
They clocked me.
I was never good at math. But no, seriously, I think, Jeff, to your overall point, to me, and Joe touched on it, this belongs going to staff, right? That's why we have staff employed by the town. And the DPW and the manager of the roads can take a look at this and see some of the concerns that clearly, without any development at all, we have pain points, right? We have issues that need to be addressed, again, without any future development. So clearly, we need to prioritize some of these items that were brought forward tonight, and then potentially start game planning, see what monies are available. To your point, if you can get $5 million for fish, maybe you can get $10 million for humans, potentially, who knows? But it'd be nice to think that we could, and all joking aside, because clearly that culvert was under the road, and that's what it's about. But there's probably some monies available that we can go after to help us rectify some of these situations in the short term, and with some knowledge of potential future growth, they could incorporate that into the designs as they go forward. But a lot to be done, a lot of money that needs to be spent, a lot of planning that needs to take place. And again, these are the things we talk about, with the planning department, and it's there's a lot to this, and a lot of departments need to work together in this town to lay out the map for us as to the best course of action.
Thank you, Pete. I would also say that this report, despite whatever developments may go on, also illuminates the lack of infrastructure improvements that have gone over time, that have not gone on over time. And so, while before we even dive into what's coming next, we need to look at where we're lacking and how to improve it, the cost, the overall cost associated with it, but also the quote-unquote improvements for daily life that we will get out of some of these developments in terms of housing, So, I mean, hand in hand, they have to go, and they have to be considered, because we're certainly going to have an increase. But overall, we have to look at the benefits of both improving the infrastructure overall, even without developments, and increased living opportunities for people in town. So I think there's certainly a lot of paper and statistics and such to digest, and the course that we take from there is probably going to take us a little while, so. But did you want to speak? Did you just raise your hand?
Just here to learn and listen.
Oh, sorry, I thought you raised your hand.
Oh, I
so.
got plenty to speak, but call me later.
All right. Okay. Is there any other follow-up that you wanted to share with us based on those comments? Matt or Steve?
No, I think that's about it. If you guys have any other questions, you feel free to reach out as you start digging into the report.
Great, thank you.
Say hello, this is Patrick Otten. May I speak?
Sure.
Yeah, hello, Patrick Otten, East Harwich. There's no denial that Harwich and most of society is a auto-centric society, but I'm looking ahead. Well, first of all, just the very poor report that Harwich has for its traffic conditions today. In the future, there is the possibility of Pine Oaks Village adding 248 units. There's 60 units planned for the development on Queen Anne Road. Headwaters has another 6 units planned. Dennis has the conversion of 70 units. That adds up to 384 units of additional families coming to North Harwich. If you have 1 kid per family, that gives you 384 kids. What do those kids do? Do they just simply drive cars every day to get to and from? Do they go to school, go to the library, visiting friends, going to the store, or just playing? No, they're riding bicycles. And there is no reasonable safety for anyone riding a bicycle on any road in Harwich. I lived in Boston for 20 years and was very comfortable riding down Comm Ave, commuting daily to my job, every single day down Comm Ave, very comfortable riding in the traffic. Will I ride my bicycle in Harwich? Absolutely not. I'll ride on the rail trail, but even that's dangerous with the dogs, the pedestrians, et cetera, et cetera. So I am very upset with this future development, not considering the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Simply putting in sidewalks is not a solution, because you're not allowed by law to ride a bicycle on a sidewalk. So I hope this traffic study takes more into consideration than simply cars. That's not life. If you're a child, you're not driving, you need to go to the store, you need to visit a friend, you need to go to the library, you're going to be on a bicycle. How many of us want to see kids riding bicycles on Queen Anne Road with, as Pete said, cars going 55 miles an hour with no shoulder? It's dangerous. And I hope this traffic study broadens their perspective and really takes into account the need for residents and pedestrians using North Harwich roads. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And I would just point out that when Matt was speaking, he was talking about, what would come next as we continue to digest all this information. And he talked about multimodal accommodations, and he talked specifically about bike paths and sidewalks and those considerations. So thank you for your comments.
Madam Chair, for the record, just want to say I agree with Patrick again.
I know, actually, I was going to point that out.
Thank you.
I find it shocking.
Thank you, Pat.
I'm taking note.
Anybody else online that wanted to speak? Hearing nobody, sorry, I thought
No,
you
I'm
heard somebody.
just getting back in the game.
I would be curious at some point, not tonight, about what I said about the speed limits, because I don't know where they came up with those numbers. I just don't.
Is there somebody online?
No, I don't know if that's a question for VHB.
Oh,
We have-
sorry.
I'm not sure whether it's a question for tonight, but I'd surely love to know the supporting data, because that is not at all, and I'm not talking anecdotally like a week here or 2 weeks there. I'm talking about
Like,
all
what's
year
the
long.
overall planning on how those numbers were determined?
I mean, Destiny and I went on student driving, and she absolutely refused to go on Queen Anne Road in any way, shape, or form for left turns, because everybody was going way more than 30 miles an hour.
Is that something you can just answer quickly, or you would need to look?
Yeah, I can answer. So the speed data came from when we did our traffic counts in October 2024. We had cameras out, and one of them was our radar camera that collected the speed data. So it categorized it by average and 85th percentile speed, and all of that speed data is included in the appendix of the report.
Is there any way of tapping into those "your speed is" signs for data purposes? Because pretty much everybody that's in front of me when I'm on those roads, you're going too fast, which means that they're even more than 5 miles an hour faster.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one off the top of my head.
I believe that Brewster has some kind of signs that the police department manages, which do collect data. I'm not sure what the product is, but I'm pretty sure they've done it.
I'd be worried for Pete.
Thank you, Michael.
We'd be down one.
One thing to note, too, just again about the speed data, is on Queen Anne Road, we collected it right as it's approaching Route 124, so that maybe had an impact on some of the speed data as people are slowing down if they're approaching a red light or something.
And that's kind of where I'm going, because where Pine Oaks is going to be sited is in the 40-mile-an-hour section, and it's robust there before you get to the bike trail and then you get to the traffic light. So there's a natural attenuation that they're coming up on, so you're unnaturally characterizing speeds across that whole road as being consistent with the speed limit. They're not.
Or not? Okay, well,
That's a good point. Thank you.
any other follow-ups, or we'll let Steve and Matt go? And thanks again for all your information. We'll continue to review and reach out with questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
On to old business. And item A.
Madam Chair, I believe item A was a deliverable that came out of your December 30th meeting, and the material presented was put together by the Assistant Town Administrator to meet that request.
Does anyone want to start the discussion on?
I only have two questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So the title of the document is wastewater project coordinator, and the whole business, the agenda topic, scope of services for wastewater management consultant. Does that matter? Because to me, the scope of services, we nailed it. The description, the process, I'm certainly prepared to vote for that tonight. But do we have to change the title?
I don't believe so. I think what your agenda got to is you're discussing a scope of services, you're maybe voting on it, and the packet material, if that is the title you want to have going forward, that prevails. But I would argue that sufficient notice was given. The only question I'd have is which title does the board prefer?
Thank you. And the only other thing, Joe, is in the bottom of that document, through you, Madam Chair, it says, successful vendor, second page, will be awarded a one-year contract with not to exceed. Do we have to pick that not to exceed dollar amount tonight?
I believe, if memory serves correctly, no. Thank you.
I know we discussed under $50,000 to
Right,
not trigger a different procurement.
When they've updated the procurement laws, I'm not recalling very well tonight, there is a point at which the process may need to be modified.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Jeff?
Nope, nothing from me.
Don? Nothing?
I'm looking for Michael to make a motion.
Well, no, I was just asking, did you have any
Good.
questions? And I'll go to Pete.
So Michael's first question, I prefer the term consultant, but I'm open.
Okay.
That's probably more what it is.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Go ahead.
Prepared to make a motion if you're ready.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the scope of services for the wastewater management consultant as presented with a not to exceed $40,000.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now, item B, I'll go to you, Joe.
Item B, I believe,
Actually,
That was me.
Don, that
Thank
was you. Sorry.
I appreciate
Sorry,
that,
Don.
thank you.
Sorry, Joe.
That only codifies what I said at the last meeting, and frankly, if we can agree to this language, I totally agree with signing it. I just don't want to get in front of our skis here and say things that we are not currently in a position to absolutely verify, but I think it's just as strong a letter ultimately, Michael.
I'll go to Michael. Michael?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the letter on behalf of the Select Board to the Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities relative to parcels of land that Pine Oaks Village project is proposing to use on Queen Anne
For our
Road.
signature.
As presented.
For our signature.
For our signature.
Second.
Second?
Yep.
Any other discussion? Oh, Pete? Did you?
Pete second.
Oh, Pete seconded? Oh, sorry.
I wasn't waiting for Don.
Quiet back there.
Is there any, no other, am I missing anyone's discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
And Madam Chair, that letter is coming out in front of all of you for signatures tonight.
Thank you. And then we only have item B under contracts.
Madam Chair, I move that we execute the deed for the sale of 172 and 178 Queen Anne Road to Christian P. Dietrich in the amount of $775,000.
Second.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair, just that, I
Nope, go ahead,
apologize.
go.
There are two originals that
Okay.
we're asking the board to sign pending your approval. That way both parties have that.
Thank you. Pete, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, I want to confirm, because the memory's not there, that this meets the minimum bid requirement.
It does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Town administrators report.
Actually, not much to report this evening, and that has no correlation to the football game I want to see. Because what I was hoping to have tonight was actually the contract that was executed between the town and Ms. Shanley. Angelique is working that process, so we're just getting all the documents together on that, so I'll be announcing that next week. In more detail, it's not to exceed $10,000, so that's going to stay under the $10,000 threshold for sure. I do want to take this opportunity to just offer a contrary statement to what was presented earlier this evening by a committee presentation. I don't want to get into a back and forth per se, but with regard to a shared resource on energy coordination, all the town managers and administrators at a presentation ironically hosted here in Harwich, Cape Light Compact presented it to us with the understanding that we had to commit that day, and that the proposal was that each town that committed to that shared position would get 1 day a week. And so my answer based on the request from Cape Light Compact was, we do not have that in the budget. We are not pursuing that at this time, and it seems woefully inadequate for what we were looking for. My recollection is the only towns that then agreed were in fact Eastham and Orleans. And so that's where that exists. I didn't want it to be portrayed that I unilaterally said no to it. It did not match up with your time frame on budgeting, and it was not any substantial situation, an offer. Having said that, I had said then, and I've said to the Energy Committee, that we're in the budget process, and so if this is something that they want us all to consider budget-wise, we can certainly do that. So I continue to offer it in that manner. If the town thinks there's value in a role like that, I talk to my colleagues. You know, an earlier question of, do we talk to Barnstable? Technically speaking, I do. I meet monthly with my peers. Last week, we had a great conversation that included 12 of the 15 towns on Cape Cod. So we do have discussions all the time, and this is certainly something I can bring back. But I didn't want that one to just sit there. And last but not least, I appreciate where the board is on employees. I will tell you that if an employee had remained, he was going to also update that he is actively working on the construction project proposed in Harwich Port parking. However, we're also trying to time it for your discussion on traffic and safety in the port. So we're actively working on a single level 2 charging station with 2 ports. So what we're looking at is, and Link's getting from a firm known as Maverick out of East Boston, a site plan that we can work on that shows the existing handicap spaces, 2 or 3 proposed locations for the charging station, as well as a proposed location for share ride, which we've talked about. So that hasn't fallen by the wayside. However, there is no plan presently to exceed that. Previous speaker was correct that there's a lot of, towns are doing a lot of different things. The only locations that we have access to as the town would either be Town Hall parking lot. Of course, we still have the remnants of the, really the household or the residential power that was used as a stopgap measure years ago, or any other town property. If we were to build, which we can, as other towns have through Eversource and the projects that are out there, our own charging station, we need to make sure that 80% of the time is for the general public. So if we're looking to convert our fleet, which we're not presently talking about yet, but could, you know, we would contemplate a charging fleet, if you will, charging station fleet at the DPW. We would have to either have that completely by the town, which means you lose some of those grant opportunities, or we would be allowing public traffic to come onto that property, and there's an abundance of reasons why I'm not in favor of that presently. Having said that, none of these discussions are stalled, pardon the expression. They can be broadened. Last but not least, we were aware that the state was doing some solar work at Park and Ride. We were never informed that it was a canopy, but the town of Harwich is recognized, so that's the town, not the government. If you look at the spot on the map, the town is acknowledged as having, I believe, 8 to 10, I'll double check that number, but charging stations available to the public. There are the stations at Park and Ride, at Cape Tech. Those are all credited to what's available in the town. If we get charging stations added to Harwich Port, that'll be added to the map. But there are existing stations that can be used. The only other thing I have to say is I had a chance with my daughters to spend the weekend in Boston. We went to see the Celtics. They lost. The better game was the next day. We were there to cheer on the Monomoy High School boys basketball, and I can only imagine it was a tough loss, but the team did very well. The chair team did well. I can only imagine for them what it meant to be on the parquet. I know it's not where Larry trod, but it's still the parquet. It's still the champions, and it was a great event all around. And everybody that was responsible for that should really enjoy. Congratulations, because it was a wonderful time. And the kids were great. They really were. So
That's great.
it was fun to be there.
That's a good weekend. But I also want to remind the public that our meeting is on Tuesday because of the long weekend, Martin Luther King Day. So we won't meet until Tuesday, what is that date? 21st. Yeah. So, Pete?
Just to touch on a couple things Joe mentioned. One, opportunity of a lifetime for those basketball players, so kudos to them, and I hope they really enjoyed it. Secondly, I'd love to see private industry step up with charging stations in this community. You know, you see it elsewhere, we don't see it locally. I'd love to see that happen. And again, if it's something we want to address as a group, there probably are some locations that could make sense, but a discussion for another day. To the board, the MMA conference that's forthcoming, does anybody plan on attending Connect 351? Is anybody attending that conference? No, hearing none.
There's a disconnect.
You are, right. Fine. And the only reason I ask is because Saturday is the business meeting with votes on the resolutions, but if nobody's attending, then nobody's going to that business meeting, and therefore we don't need to vote on those resolutions as a group. Thank you.
Joe?
In years past, they've deferred to the senior ranking member who is present. So I have been a voting member in the past. I will be voting on the Maya insurance rates. When it comes to the business meetings, if there's no guidance, I sit, I listen, I sometimes talk, but I don't vote.
Okay, but you do sit through the entire meeting?
Yeah.
God help you.
Yeah.
Well, with that known and said, would you rather that we took a vote on the resolutions as a group so that you had the ability to vote?
That would be fantastic.
So we'd have to do that at our next meeting, Madam Chair, if
That would be very timely and
the board
helpful.
so decides.
That on the agenda, yeah.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Don?
Absolutely nothing.
No, I have nothing to share, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I'm good.
So I'm just going to let you know that on the agenda next week, I'm going to put reorg on. I've been in this role since Mary Anderson resigned, and it's a new year, and I think it's time for a change, so I'll be putting that on the agenda.
Before you bail on us,
Yeah.
I kind of lied. We need to keep looking forward, and I know Jeff's doing a whole heck of a lot of stuff with them, and so am I at this point. Keep the discussion point open with Chatham about the middle school, because there's a lot more going on there, and it just appears to me that every conversation seems to have more dollar signs associated with it.
I did also, I did speak to, texted Tina Games today to make sure that that was still the status of getting the 3 bids for the air quality testing. She did confirm that it is, so that's why I also wanted that email to you guys in the correspondence so that everybody knows that that is what's going on.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at Pete's unique comment of a couple of months ago that we shouldn't be doing 75-25, especially on a building that we inherited.
More concerned about Pete's speed.
I can slow him down if he gets behind me.
I'm just going to be behind him.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Matt.